Hey, Ben Cormack here, and today we are going to talk about that one muscle to fix your back pain. Now, if you are scrolling through Google or you go through the contents list at YouTube, there is lots of content that relates to this. So let's be upfront, let's be blunt, let's be plain. The likelihood of the complex world of back pain boiling down to one muscle in the human body across all of the human bodies is frankly a little ridiculous. All right. So if we go way back into the 90s, the idea was the TVA was not firing, it wasn't activating, it wasn't stabilizing the spine, it was creating micro instability that created micro inflammation, and that was the cause of back pain. And this was all based off one study that kind of looked at someone doing this and stuck an electrode in here, and suddenly that was the reason for back pain. Now, another muscle that's often blamed is the psoas, the hip flexor. And again, the psoas gets tight. It pulls us into hip flexion. It pulls us into an anterior pelvic tilt. It creates this extended lumbar spine, this lumbar lordosis increase, and that's the cause of back pain. Another muscle we look at is the quadratus lumborum, and that kind of goes between the pelvis and the rib. And again, that gets tight. That pulls us into some sort of position, and this causes back pain. There have been other muscles blamed, or things like the diaphragm, and it's a very, very common narrative. Now, what does this narrative have in common? Well, it's all very biomechanical, meaning that it kind of focuses on how the function of those muscles changes the mechanics of how the body works. Now, one thing that we've discovered from biomechanical research, and that's the key, is that actually when we take these biomechanical theories and we test them, whether that's the anterior pelvic tilt, whether that's TVA activation and timing, whether it's QL kind of stuff, we don't see these simple biomechanical patterns reflected in this basic research. None of these studies are particularly difficult to do. They are simply taking a posture or a position and then trying to correlate them with, do people have back pain or not? And nearly all of the time when these studies are done well, we see that these relationships are not consistent. Now, are some people going to have these biomechanics in pain? Yes. Do some other people have the same biomechanics but don't have pain? How many people who are asymptomatic have the same postures or positions or tight muscles or weak muscles or not activating muscles? Well, from the research, we know a hell of a lot. And sometimes we can do things called case-controlled research, where we can take a bunch of people with back pain, a bunch of people without back pain, and then kind of analyse the similarities and the differences between the two. So what we have to understand, and one thing that we've learned as we've done more research into back pain, is that it's probably not likely to be one muscle affecting our posture that's affecting pain. It's much more likely that it's multifactorial. Many things may end up having an effect on your back pain. Your back pain may affect many things. So one of the things that is not considered with some of this research is kind of the reverse causality. Maybe it's that if I have back pain, it has an effect on how tight that muscle gets. So generally the theory is the muscle gets tight, we develop pain. Well, maybe we develop pain and the muscle gets tight. Maybe pain causes the muscle to be tight. Maybe pain causes it to activate differently. Maybe pain causes our posture to change. So although we don't have even clear correlations, if we did have clear correlations, we still need to prove that the problem came first before the back pain. And that's really quite difficult to do unless we do what's called prospective research. And when we do prospective research, we often find lots of these theories don't hold as much water as we would like, because it simply might be that pain changes posture, activation, strength, all of these different things. So it's our body's response to back pain that may cause lots of these changes, rather than, these things have happened and therefore they cause our back pain. So what's fascinating about back pain research is how broad and wide it has become. So it looks at socioeconomics. So we know that people who are less advantageous in terms of wealth tend to suffer from back pain and more pain in general. We know that people with poor health and comorbidity tend to suffer with a bit more back pain. We know that being too active or not being active enough might have an effect on back pain. How much you smoke, how much you drink, all of these kind of lifestyle factors. We even have other factors such as social isolation, childhood trauma. All of these things have been linked into back pain as well. We don't know exactly how mechanistically they play into the mix, but we do know there can be an association between back pain and all of these different factors. And what that does is it erodes away our confidence in this idea that we're going to find this one thing, this one muscle that I need to strengthen, I need to activate, I need to loosen, whatever that dominant narrative is. So, can trying to help that muscle help? Well, this is where it gets murky and sticky. Absolutely, yes, it can. So I can try to activate a muscle, I can try to stretch a muscle, I can try to strengthen a muscle, I can try to change my posture. The process of trying to do that, the input, the movement, the load, these type of things may have a positive effect. And what that sometimes does is it affects the narrative. So we call it post hoc reasoning. And what that means is we kind of justify the narrative via the outcome. So we might say, well, I think you have poor core stability. We need to activate that core. And the process of activating that core maybe has a positive effect. Now, what we then do is we confuse that with the theory. So because we said do core stability, now that core stability mechanism, that activation of that muscle is the reason why. In reality, we don't know. There could be kind of contextual effects, placebo effects, metabolic effects, physiological effects. All of these different mechanisms could have a positive effect on the outcome. And it becomes very, very hard to know exactly why it happened. Although human beings, we love to validate our theories. So is it likely to be that one muscle in your back? I very much doubt it. It's been elusive for lots of musculoskeletal pain in lots of areas of the body, from the knee to the shoulder to the back to the neck, etc. Pain is complex. Humans are complex. So let's not get sucked in too much by some of these overly basic narratives that don't actually reflect the research that we have.